My name is Hai Nguyen. I'm co-founder of Affluence, the company behind Matrix. First, I want to start with the question, why are you here? It's one of those things I want to bring up front and center because I want to make sure that whatever reason it is that you're here today, I want to make the best use out of your time. There's a reason why you're here listening to me potentially for the next hour. So why, what motivated you to actually be here? And let me start about some of the challenges I've seen our customer face. But if this resonates with you, then you're in the right place. So first of all, if you feel overwhelmed with personal tasks, meetings, and emails, or at the team level, if you don't know what your team priorities are and what others are working on, and you wish that you did, and then thirdly, if at the organizational level, you feel that you're not always aligned with everyone else on what's important and urgent. These are three challenges that I see over and over again. Priority matrix is a tangible and concrete way to tackle those problems, and it's a way to prioritize your most important work for yourself, your team, and your organization. So with that, I want to get to my goals for today. One, to help you understand the basics of Matrix, help you become more effective and efficient at prioritizing tasks, projects, and emails, help you envision what your work and life success may look like with Matrix, and then learn 20% of the features in Matrix that will give you 80% of the benefits. And then, of course, provide you some tips and tricks to help you prioritize better starting right now. And then lastly, make sure that you walk away feeling productive and have a strategy to be aligned with your team. One of the things I want to emphasize over and over again around software in general is that it's not the software. And I'm sure all of you here have used so many different systems over the years. You've gone from everything from what notebook, you've gone to notepads and sticky notes and so forth. And that's the reality for almost all of us. We all have ways of working in different ways of tracking our work. But once in a while, you run into those challenges and you realize, wait a minute, I'm not living to my fullest potential. I'm not working on the right things. I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so busy. And that is when we actually look for something different. And so a lot of people come to Matrix and some people really share their notebooks and show me how, they will draw 4 quadrants on a notebook to figure out their work. And so what I'm really hoping to do for you today is make sure that you walk away with some tangible goals and tangible insights to actually start putting Matrix to work for you. So Matrix is a comprehensive email priority and project management software. So what that means is that at the individual level, we can help you understand what are your most important tasks and your most important emails, able to prioritize them so then you don't drop those emails. One of the challenges I face personally, I get more than 100 emails per day, and sometimes it's very difficult to know what emails should I respond to, and that's the first thing. But then also, if I have important emails previously, it is so challenging to ensure that I actually respond to previously received emails. And then at the team level, what happens is Matrix help you stay online on the key projects. What that means is that it helps everyone within your team know exactly what the priorities are. And so then when you have a staff meeting, everyone's on the same page. You're not going through and talking about things that aren't important. And instead, you can focus on the conversations that matter most. And then at the organizational level, Matrix create a single source of truth. So what that really means is that you're able to understand exactly what everyone's priorities are across all the projects that you work on or involved with. And then not only that, Matrix helps you with both employees retention, employee onboarding, and employee offboarding. So one simple click or well, rather a couple of simple clicks in Matrix allow you to reprioritize and be able to reassign tasks for a single person to somebody new should that person leave the organization or is on leave. And it's one of those things where Matrix gives you context and helping data transfer, data migrations, and ensure that everyone is successful. So whether or not you're here today because you want to help your team be more successful or help your organization be more successful, or just prioritizing your personal tasks, Matrix is flexible enough to be able to adapt to all three scenarios. But honestly, the most important is you at the personal level. If we can make you successful, everything else will fall into place. So what makes Protomatrix better than other solutions? First of all, it's the only application that's Microsoft 365 security certified on Teams, Outlook, and web app. And the reason I want to bring this up for all of you is that organizations, and perhaps the ones that you work with, will be more strict on security. And so when you use Microsoft Teams app or Outlook apps, there are very, very few applications that are Microsoft certified. That means we are tested, our security documents are reviewed by Microsoft. And so what that means is that it makes it easier for you to use Protomatrix. And then not only that, your IT will have an easier time approving Protomatrix. So you don't want to risk using an application that's not Microsoft certified and then afterwards having to move off that system. So Protomatrix is the only one that's certified for Teams, Outlook, and web at the same time. And we're deeply integrated into the Microsoft ecosystem in general. So Microsoft Teams, Outlook, and even the new Copilot. Now, you don't have to use Microsoft to use Protomatrix. Our application works outside of all of that as well in desktop app, web app, mobile apps, etc. But if you happen to use Microsoft, if you're part of the Microsoft ecosystem, it's almost a no-brainer. And then Protomatrix also provide what I call people-centric collaboration. It's a really nice way to look at the information that you have from a different lens. Now, the vast majority of you who've ever, done project management or used project management software, it's very project oriented. That means you have a project and you have the task for the project, right? You have dependencies, all that. But Protomatrix also lets you take this different perspective, which is to say, hey, what are the things I have to do for my manager across all of my projects, and show me all of that right now. And so that people-centric view is actually a really neat and powerful way to ensure that you work on the right things for the right people. Again, context is everything. And then, of course, Protomatrix is available as a standard SaaS solution, which is what I'll be showing you. But we also have a HIPAA-compliant solution for healthcare and life sciences, and then an Azure government cloud solution for state and local government. And then Protomatrix offers one central place so that everyone can go to know what needs to be done. So if you happen to see that, that means you're using Protomatrix correctly. But if you're finding that Protomatrix doesn't give you insight yet into everything that you should be working on, what your team should be working on, what your organizational goals are, then that means there's room for improvement. And then lastly, I wanted to bring up the point that it's actually very easy to get started with Protomatrix. In fact, you can get started almost right away, and it takes you seconds to start putting down the things that matter. But then Protomatrix provide all the capabilities to provide value at all the other levels. So don't be scared to get started with Protomatrix just for yourself. Even if you intend to bring Protomatrix onto your team. But at the same time, if you want to deploy Protomatrix for the entire organization right at the beginning, that's possible as well. Let's start with the fundamentals behind Protomatrix. So there's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." Now, the reason I like this quote is because it helps you understand that not all the urgent things are the important things. And this is a problem that we have in today's society, which is we have so many things to do. We get so many emails, so many meetings, so many phone calls, so many text messages, that what happens is that we end up working on the things that are last in, and then they become first out, as opposed to the most important things. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have a very important project that you're working on, and you're supposed to build that presentation or whatever. And then guess what? You start your day, and the first thing you see is an email that comes in. And you're like, oh, let me look at this email, and then respond to that email. And then, a few moments later, someone knocks on your office door and asks you a question that's not relevant. And guess what? You answer that again. And so what happens is that all these urgent things are pulling our attention away from what's truly important. And instead, what we really should be doing is time boxing ourselves to focus on that really important presentation that's got to be done at this moment. And therefore, if you look at all the things you have to do, instead of having one long to-do list, what we end up doing is actually categorizing them into what's called the Eisenhower Matrix. The idea is that instead of one long list, you have action items distributed into 4 distinct buckets: important and urgent, important but not urgent, not important but urgent, and then not important and not urgent, right? And so the Eisenhower Matrix actually helps you prioritize your tasks and make the most out of your time. But in reality, when you actually put this into practice, you don't want to track it in those same ways. And so what happens is Matrix uses this format of the Eisenhower Matrix, where again you have your action items, but instead on the top left will be your do now. These are those important urgent tasks that we talked about. And then the things that are important but not urgent are the things you should plan for. And that's really where you should be spending your effort. And then the not important things, perhaps you could delegate to somebody else, or that's what third parties are for, right? And then lastly, you shouldn't have anything that's not important nor urgent. Therefore, quadrant 4 should be your inbox. So that's how it works. Imagine again, take out a piece of paper, write down the 15 things you have to do, but instead of putting one long list, put it into these 4 buckets. Now, a couple of advice that I have right off the bat. If you put everything into the quadrant 1, that defeated the purpose. If everything's important and urgent, then nothing is important and urgent. So keep that in the back of your mind. And that's one of those things where I want to bring up over and over again around, how all of this comes together. It's not about the software. It's not about the software. It's about the mindset. It's about the framework. And so the reason why Matrix users are successful is because Matrix makes it tangible. And when I say tangible, I mean the following. Imagine if you did that exercise I just told you, right? Write down those action items and then put it into a matrix. Now you ask all your coworkers to do the exact same thing. Guess what? Once they do that, you walk around the office and you start comparing notes. Imagine being able to see your manager's priority matrix, and then be able to see, wait a minute, these are my priorities, but these are his or her priorities. Are we aligned? Are we misaligned? Where are the mismatches? And then doing the exact same exercise with your direct reports, and then doing the exact same exercise with the colleagues that you work with. And then imagine even further, imagine being able to see your clients' priorities. So if you think about other people that you work with, a lot of us think that we know what they think are important, right? There's this implied aspect of it, but the reality is implied is not sufficient. So being able to put it down into something tangible makes it explicit and helps you facilitate the conversation. So the 4-quadrant Eisenhower matrix create alignment because it forces you to prioritize from the beginning. If you had put all of those things in quadrant 1, all of those things in quadrant 4, that's not going to work. And so the exact same exercise is what makes you make those hard decisions. And so I would say half the work is actually in deciding what goes in quadrant 1, right? And then half the work, and then of course quadrant 2. And then the other half is actually executing. The thing that makes us successful is working on the right things and doing those things well. Doing a fantastic job on the wrong things actually get us nowhere, right? And then, so success from using Matrix isn't about finding what everyone agrees on, because again, if you guys agree on everything, you didn't need our software in the first place. You can just continue to do whatever it is that you're doing right now. But once in a while, you'll discover disagreements on what should be a priority when it isn't. And that's when you know you're using Matrix correctly. Every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, month, or something like that, you'll find that, wait a minute, you're working on the wrong things, or wait a minute, your direct reports is working on the wrong things. And so I hope that in the back of your mind, as you use Matrix, as you think about how you want to use it across your team, that you keep this point in mind. Focus on finding the disagreements. If it's too obvious, don't worry about it. If it's something that you think is actually really critical, but others do not, that's where you should focus the conversation. A couple of tips to shortcut your success. One, if you're a manager, create a project for your team and staff meetings and screen share during those meetings. So I can't emphasize this enough. This is the easiest way to get started with Matrix, which is when you use the software, create a project, call it team priorities, write down all the things that you consider to be important. And that could be deriving from your managers and your directors or whatever it is, right? And then as simple as once a week, review that matrix, update it as needed, and then during your team meeting, just share it so then everyone else can take a look at it and say, okay, I see what our priorities are. And then when you have a discussion, guess what? Focus on the Q1, focus on the Q2, right? And then whenever you have further disagreements, that's when you just move things around and reprioritize in real time. And if you did almost nothing else as a manager, that single use case with Protomatrix will be tremendously powerful. So I truly hope all of you will take advantage of that. If you manage multiple sites, so let's just say if you're an ops manager and you have multiple locations, multiple facilities that you're managing, create a Protomatrix project for each of those locations. And when I say a Protomatrix project, what it really means is the equivalent of a quadrant. So everything that is distinct and unique should have its own sets of quadrants. The reason is it makes you a lot more aware of the priorities within the context of that site, that location, that initiative, whatever it is. If you have a lot of repetitive training initiatives, or let's just say, imagine if you're in accounting and then you have quarterly things that you have to do, right? That's very, very straightforward. And it's always the same list of action items. Matrix let you build an entire template around the 4 quadrants and able to generate that in whenever you need it. So what that means is in Q2, you launch the Matrix and then just set the start date, and Matrix will actually set all the due dates and create all the tasks for you automatically. Extremely powerful way to save you time and effort as you invest more into Matrix. If you're a business owner or a department owner, create a project for each of your departments and each of your subgroups. If you're an individual contributor, create a project for your goals. And so at this last part is actually applicable to almost all of us. Essentially, if you create a project to manage your goals, and your goals could be both for work as well as personal goals, then it actually helps motivate you. And so, for me personally, I have a project for my 2024 goals. I have a project for managing the things I want to do, because there's plenty of things I want to do that if I don't set the time or effort for it, or I don't make it top of mind, I forget, just because I have so many other things going on at the same time. I do want to mention that the webinars are on our website. And so this webinar, as well as all the other webinars, are on affluence.com/webinars. And then we also have these recordings in other languages as well. So if some of your team members required additional languages options, reach out to us. With that, I'm actually going to show you how to put this into practice. So here I have my Matrix open. So this is the web application. Actually, this is my application of Matrix inside Outlook. I'm gonna go ahead and jump to my web app here. So when you need to access Matrix, you just go to our website, affluence.com/pm. We also have desktop version. We also have apps inside Outlook, inside Teams, as well as mobile apps. So you choose the option that works best for you. Now, when you open Matrix, the structure is pretty much the same. On the left-hand side, you have your list of projects, right? So for example, this team priorities, that's a project. As I mentioned to you earlier, if you have multiple sites or facilities, those each could be a different project. Or if you have a bunch of clients that you need to manage the tasks for them, right? If you're an accounting firm, or if you have enterprise customers that you're prioritizing tasks for, you can have a project for each of those. And so one of the things I want to suggest is that don't be scared to create multiple projects. Creating different projects helps us put things into context. One of the problems we have is that, we just have one communication. Like, for example, if you only use Microsoft Teams and you talk about everything in Microsoft Teams, it's great. It's so easy to talk about things. The problem is looking for information around what you said when, and things that happened like six months ago. So by having things within the proper context, you actually end up having a better understanding of what it is that you need to work on. So as you can see, I would choose a project here. I'll just choose my team priorities. Now within the center, front and center, is the 4 quadrants. Every project that you select will have these 4 quadrants. And in this particular case, I call project quadrant 1 high priority, medium priority, low priority, and catch-all. So my task, my action items fall within these 4 quadrants. Now, let me give you an example. Let's just say if I want to follow up with webinar participants. So that's how I would create a task, okay? But in Matrix, we use what's called natural language to help you set due dates. So I could just say due tomorrow, 2 p.m., and I'll go ahead and click add. Our system will interpret this due tomorrow at 2 p.m. and set my due date for tomorrow at 2 p.m. automatically for me. Now, one of the reasons I like this and I encourage you to use it is that if you want to understand what things are important and urgent, then you have to be able to put it within the context of time. So dates are important. And you know, a long time ago when I first used Matrix or just task management in general, I like to create tasks, but I don't set as many due dates. The problem I have is it writes it down, but it doesn't put it within the dimensions of time for me to understand when I should work on it. And one of the things I realized is that it's okay to set the wrong due date. Guess what? I can just change it. And so that's one of the things I encourage you to do when you create a task in Matrix, set the due dates, and then it'll show up in your Matrix calendar. You'll get reminders when the due dates come. Now, once I created that task, on the right-hand side, I see my item details. This is where I can add additional information around the task itself. For example, I can see what project it's in. If I need to move project, I can do that. I can actually start the task. What starring does is it actually pushes the task to the top of the list. So if you have more and more things within a particular matrix, then you want to go and differentiate, say, hey, these are important, these are important within that particular quadrant. And what I like to do is anything that's active. So what that means is, hey, I'm going to work on this task today, then I'll star it. And so that allows me just to find the task much more easily, given sort of the whole universe of tasks that I can work on. I can also add an icon. Now, icon is just a way to visualize that information. But the powerful thing about Matrix is that if you use icons well, and if you use icons consistently, Matrix will tell you where you spend your time. So imagine if whenever you travel, you choose a travel icon, or whenever you do something else, whatever it is, you choose an icon. Later on, Matrix will tell you, hey, by the way, these are the icons that you're working on. These are the number of tasks related to each of those. So in general, this is not a necessary requirement to use Matrix, but if you do end up, if you are very well organized and you like to have different different ways to mark your task, then you use the icons. One area of success I've seen customers use is actually the colors here, red, yellow, and green. It's just a way to signify that something's on time or not on time. The icons themselves don't represent anything concrete. It's just a way to organize. Below that, you actually have owner. So as you can see, when I created this task, it's just me. Now, if you're using Matrix on a personal level, sure, you don't have to prioritize anybody. And whenever you create a task, it's just you, right? But what happens is if you want to start to use Matrix within your team, you can actually click on here and assign to another person. It's as easy as clicking it and change ownership. Now, I'm a follower of this task. So after I assign to the other person, I remain a follower. So what that means is I'll get updates. So one of the key things around good prioritization skills and good delegation skills in general is to make sure that when you delegate, you're able to go and understand the status of those tasks, and then be able to answer any follow-up question. So in this case, when I assign this task to Eugenia, she'll get a notification that I assign it to her. But then if she asks me questions within Matrix here, I'm able to go and respond to it. Or if she marked it as done, then I'll know that she marked it as done. Now move a little bit to the right, and you see that that due date that I set is here. But next to it is what's called reminders. Now there's a big difference between due dates and reminders. Let's just say if you have something that's due in 2 weeks, and it's going to take you 3 days to do. So you set the due date, due in 2 weeks. Guess what? 2 weeks come by and you're like, wait, I can't get this done. It's going to take me 3 days. So you don't want to do that. So instead, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you remember to even get started, or you remember to make it top of mind. So down here in the message section, I can say, remind me daily. So now on a daily basis, Matrix will remind me to work on this task that's due in 2 weeks. As an example, when I follow up with my customers, I would go and say due in 1 month, and then I would say remind me monthly. So guess what? I have that due date and that comes and I'll go and I'll follow up with the customer or whatever. But if I forget, it's not a big deal because Matrix will remind me until I get it done, or I can go and of course change reminders and change the due date later. Honestly, due dates and reminders are the two most important features that I think you should use. So if you use Matrix and you use almost no other features in the item details, use due dates and reminders, please. And here's another reason why the reminders is actually really powerful. It's a way to trick our brain. I mentioned to you earlier around urgent versus important, right? What happens is this. We have a bunch of important things that we want to work on. But what happens is that last email, right? That the moment you want to work on something, you get another email. And then the moment you want to work on something, you get a notifications from another app or whatever telling you to do something else. And then you start forgetting because you only have a due date on a task. So by setting reminders, it's a way to make something top of mind. In a previous webinar, I talk about goal setting, how, at the beginning of the year, you'll set your goals. Everyone's ambitious, right? Oh, yeah, I want to do this, I want to do that. And then what happens is January comes and you're like, okay, you're still thinking about it. But then February, and you're like, okay, you know what? I have these other things, so I can't do these goals yet. And then by April, it's completely gone because you're completely forgotten everything. So what happens is that by using Party Matrix, what I would do for my goals is I would go and say, this is my monthly goal. So I would say due in a month, but then I would set recurring monthly reminders. So now on a monthly basis, I'll get a recurring reminder from Matrix to think about my goals. And that's how we trick our brain. By making it top of mind for us, we actually can go and ensure that we will work on those right things. So I think our brain is sometimes pretty primitive, and that's okay. And if we don't do that, other urgent things will take over completely. So please use those two features, okay? Down here in the chat, and this is where you can have that communication. It's within the context of the item itself, and it's a big difference from like using Microsoft Teams or a meeting or whatever when you talk about so many different things at the same time, and then in 6 months you have no idea what it is that you talked about. You forgot what all the context, or if you have a conversation in the hallway, fantastic. Only problem is there's no history. There's no way for you to track all of those records. So using the conversation in Matrix keeps everything within that context. And what's powerful about it is that when you assign this task to another person, right? Again, much, much later from now, they can go and review the history just for this item. And that really makes it useful for someone else who's taking over a job. Especially imagine if you're working on something that spans across 18 months, right? There's no way you're going to be able to go and look through 30 emails and all these chat system that you use, text messages, meetings, and so forth. So use the conversation here in Matrix to make sure that you have the right conversation within that context. And then not only that, Matrix track all the changes. If you set a due date, it tracks it. If you change the due date, it tracks it. When you mark the task as done, it'll tell you how long it took from the creation date to completion date. So if you're a manager or if you're someone who's trying to ensure that the most important tasks are not dropped, this is very helpful. And then a notes section is where you can add subtasks, and you can also add additional metadata around the task. It's really straightforward. It's not intended to be a replacement for your Microsoft Word or Google Docs or whatever, but it's where you can add some simple notes around the task so then others know what it is this is about. And if you go to the resources section, this is where it actually gets really interesting. Imagine there's additional information related to a task. So for example, in this case, follow with webinar participants. Well, I probably would have to upload the list of webinar attendees, right? I can upload an email template that I have. And so in here, you can actually upload those files or documents, or you can link to other places such as SharePoint or Drive or Box or websites or whatever. Or you can also upload an actual email as well. And then, of course, you can actually link Party Matrix items to other items. So Party Matrix actually let me connect items together and say that these items are related, even if they're owned by different people, and then built to say that, this item is blocked by this other item. And so if you happen to use Party Matrix and do all those linking with resources, it'll build a dependencies, Gantt charts, and all those things for you automatically. So that's the resources section here. So in a nutshell, on the left-hand side is your list of projects. In the middle, the actual priorities. And then on the right-hand side are the actual item details, the nitty-gritty details for every single task. Again, you don't have to use any of these other features aside from the due dates and reminders, which I strongly recommend that you put for all your most important tasks. One of the things you can do in Matrix is actually to look at the same data that you have from a different lens. And so, as mentioned, the 4 quadrants is very useful as a way to see priorities. So when I start my day, I can actually just resize this and say, okay, these are my high priority tasks. And then these are my lower priority. And then let's take a look at my inbox, all the possible tasks I have. So resizing the 4 quadrants is a great way to focus. And actually, I have customers where literally they will dedicate an entire screen to Matrix. So you have 2 working screen. One screen is Matrix, the other is the actual work that they do, and it's fantastic because they're able to remind themselves exactly what it is they are working on and why. But you can actually go to the list view. So the list view actually will show Matrix and show all the items, but instead of actually in a matrix form, in a list form. And what's nice about this is I can sort it just like sort of an Excel header that you can click on and sort it. It's very easy to see things that are overdue. And then not only that, I can actually click on filter and find all sorts of information related to specific things. For example, I can say, show me only the items assigned to quadrant 1, right, for a specific user, a specific person. So if you're trying to ensure that the people are working on the right things, you can go to this view and just filter as needed. But here's another thing. I mentioned to you how maybe one of your employees is on leave, so unexpectedly, right? And now there's a bunch of tasks that you need to reprioritize. Well, Matrix makes it so easy to redelegate that, and I'll show you how. Let's just say I go to this other project here. Now there's a lot more tasks here in this particular case. Then you imagine if Eugenia leaves or is not available, and now I need to reassign Eugenia's task. I can click on filter, choose Eugenia right here, and now it shows me only her task. And then not only that, I can go and select all tasks and reassign, change owner, and that's it. So imagine being able to do something like that across your entire Matrix in a seamless way. And that's what Matrix allows you to do. And again, the next person who takes over the task will have the entire context, all the history. And so at the team level and at the organizational level, Matrix just makes it so easy for you to ensure that there's continuity, for lack of better words. So that's the list view. I can actually clear this out. I can go to the calendar view. And now again, in the calendar view, it shows you all the tasks that have due dates on them. One of the neat things that you can do in Matrix is actually recurring tasks and recurring reminders. And let me explain what that means. So let's just say on the 1st of every month, you have a series of tasks that you need everyone to do. Okay, so let's just do that as an example here. Task, recurring task. So imagine you have this recurring task that you have to have your entire group to do. And who knows what that is? It could be, just reviewing your policies or whatever it is. Now, when you do something like that, you can actually click on dates here, and then you can say, we're going to make this due on the 1st. And then you can say, make it occur on a monthly basis. So now what you've just done is you've made it a recurring task on a monthly basis. But what's neat about this is you can actually invite your entire team on here. So now it's a recurring task for your entire team. Then you set the recurring reminder on the day prior. And again, you say recur on a monthly basis. And so as you can see, I can say remind all followers. So if you have something that's really important, that's all you have to do. Now, everyone who's on this in this group would know exactly what it is that you have to do. And one neat thing in Matrix, again, in the comment section, is that if you have a project and you have a lot of tasks in, a lot of people in it, and you want to invite everybody, you can just say invite everyone. And again, Matrix will use natural language to process that and invite all the appropriate people into that task for you. So the calendar and how our system interact with the Matrix calendar and reminders is extremely useful for those who are date oriented. And then one other thing about this is Matrix actually offers you all sorts of filters. So at the top here, you can filter by different project. You can filter by all these other things that I mentioned to you earlier. You can also go to the Gantt chart. So the Gantt chart takes the same information, but displays it in a timeline view. Now, when would you use a calendar versus Gantt chart? Calendar, in my opinion, are good for things that are due today or due this week, right? At the month level, it starts to get a little busy. Gantt charts, on the other hand, is good at visualize things across multiple months and years. So you can see how I can zoom out here. And now I might have a project that goes through 2027, and Matrix actually will show me how all of that plays together, who are all the people responsible for it, and then I can actually click on each of these, move things around, drag and drop them as needed, and reprioritize or change the due dates very, very seamlessly. One of the things you'll see too is Matrix has this add item button everywhere. And the reason we do that is because we want to make it easy for you to create tasks. And that's a very, very important part of using our system is that it should be seamless. It should be easy for you to add new things, assign to people very, very easily. Now I want to show you a different view on all of this, which is the one-on-one view. So when I go to the one-on-one view here in Matrix, I can select a person. So instead of selecting a project, I select a person. And when I select that person, look what it shows. It shows me everything that Eugenia and I have in common across all of my Matrix. If you manage a team of 5, you're not going to click around across 20 projects to know what everyone's working on, right? So you have a one-on-one meeting, you open up Matrix, go to the one-on-one view, select the person, and then you screen share or you sit down together and you take a look at what's on the screen. And this will show you everything that that person's working on, all the due dates, all the things that's been modified. And then in fact, you can go to filter and see all the things they finished this past week, this past month in one central place. And then not only that, if you come up with new things to do, so just click on add share task. And again, use the natural language that I mentioned to you, and Matrix will automatically assign the task to the person, add you as a follower, and then once you create that task, you can even choose what quadrants and what project it goes in. So this just makes your meetings so much more effective. I mean, I've seen so many scenarios where people will be in a meeting, they talk about all these cool things they're going to do. 2 weeks later, you get back together, and then crickets because no one wrote down those ideas. No one wrote down those tasks, right? It's like, oh yeah, I didn't write it down. I forgot. And so you take that excuse out by just making it so much easier to write down those tasks as you're having the meeting. And Matrix just makes it seamless to assign to the person and invite you as a follower so you get the updates. So I strongly recommend that. I think it's neat for one-on-one, and it's a very unique feature in Matrix that no one else has. Now on the left-hand side, there's a couple of other things I want to show you. So I showed you the calendar at the project level, but Matrix also has a calendar at the global level. So if you have 100 projects, 10,000 tasks, you go to calendar and you'll see all that here. Now, of course, that would be overwhelming, but you can actually change on project and just choose the project you want to see. And then not only that, you can click on filter, and now you can see what are all the items on Sally's calendar across these 3 projects, and Matrix will build that for you automatically. So this is a really neat way to look at all the information that you have. So again, at the individual level, this view will show you everything you have to do across all of your Matrix. At the team level, this view will give you a sense of what all your team members are doing across your team projects. If you use Matrix at the organizational level and you're taking projects and you're inviting different people and so forth, this gives you a perspective across everything. And then not only that, you can filter the information as needed to pinpoint exactly what you need and be able to see everyone's workload, what their schedule is like. And if we talk about how people go on leave unexpectedly all the time, or sometimes they leave the organization completely. If you have important tasks, you want to make sure that someone else can take over. And to do that, you need to know what it is that they're working on. So that's the power in using Matrix. So that's one of the reasons why, small business owners, like you have to, for lack of a better word, enforce or or insist that your employees use Protomatrix to track their tasks. So then when they leave, it's not on a piece of paper, it's not in their head, it's not on their sticky notes, it's not in their emails, it's in one central place that you can go and immediately delegate to somebody else. The last view I'll show you on this side is the search view. The search view we used to call the master view. And the reason it's because it shows you everything across everything in Protomatrix. So when you go to the search view here, it shows you all the tasks, you can sort it and so forth, but then you can actually filter it from here too. So once you do a filter, you can actually save that filter as a custom filter. So imagine if you want to know what are all the things that my direct report is working on. And so you can actually build that filter and then choose the dates and all that. And then you can actually save that. And now, whenever you go in this view, you can choose that filter and suddenly all that information is available for you. And then not only that, imagine this. I mentioned to you earlier how you can reassign all the tasks from someone. Well, you can do it at the global level. So when you go here, I can go and say, what are all the tasks that Tyler has across my entire Protomatrix, right? And all the things he hasn't finished, rather. And then I select all, and then I reassign. Or I can even mark it all completed. So it was like, you know what? I don't need any of these things anymore. Mark them already completed. Or delete them all. Or change owner to have someone else take over the job. And this is across every single project. So I don't have to open and I don't have to go and search through each and so forth. So this capability just makes it so seamless. I love the select all feature that we have. Okay, I'm going to switch gear now and talk about email management. So I'm going to go ahead and go open Outlook here. Now check this out. I open my Outlook for web, and it doesn't matter if you use Outlook for web or Outlook for desktop, Windows, or Mac or whatever. When you open Outlook, you can actually install Protomatrix by going to the bottom left here. Click on Add Apps and search Protomatrix. And when you do, you can pin Protomatrix on the left-hand side, and now I have the entire Protomatrix web app inside Outlook. I don't even have to go to the Affluence website. And this, if you're a big Outlook person, this is like game changing because we're one of the very few applications that's called a universal app that supports this. And the fact that you can actually use your entire Protomatrix here just makes it so much easier when you're shifting between emails and project management, right? And so you can see how I have all the features I need, my menus up here. And now what happens is that when I get an email in Protomatrix, let's just say, I'll show you how this works here. Imagine if I have an email in Protomatrix, an email in Outlook, and I want to prioritize that email. Now, why do I want to prioritize an email? It's because flagging is insufficient. I'm sure you flag your emails. Everyone does. That's okay. No one's perfect. And you flag your emails, but guess what? You have 50 flag emails. So what are you going to do? And then which of those emails do you respond to? Which of those emails are due? And then you're going to get 5 more flag emails tomorrow. And then what happens if you need to make sure that you have a recurring reminders on those emails? And so with Protomatrix, I can actually click on apps here. And if you click on add app, is you'll see Protomatrix, and we're typically under editor's choice, Microsoft editor's choice. And so you just have to install that application. So when you go back to add apps here, and I'll show you one more time, once you have that installed, there's something called turn email into tasks. So that's the integration you want to add. You click on that and you choose prioritize email. So now what happens is I can take an email and convert it into a priority matrix task. And what's neat about this is I can choose what project it goes in, right? And then I can choose what quadrant it goes in, and I can do a due date. So now imagine if I have an email, I can't answer it yet, but I got to answer within a month, right? And this happens all the time, by the way. Like we have an email that's not meant to be answered right now. It's something that I have to look at a month later. And so I would do this, and then I would set the due date. And in fact, I could even assign to another person as well. So now I can assign this email to another person. I can click capture email. And so what Protomatrix does is it takes that and creates a task. This is my item details. And check this out. Remind me weekly. So now on a weekly basis, I'll get a reminder to answer this email. And then not only that, Protomatrix will actually go and upload that email into the resources section. So then your coworker who got delegated can open it and respond to it. Now, there's one more thing that makes Protomatrix unique, which is we're the only one that I know that let you attach emails to existing tasks as well. So you can have multiple emails, documents, resources, all linked to one central thing. And so instead of choosing prioritize email, you can actually open Matrix instead. And when you go here, you can search for that existing Matrix task and then hover over it and choose attach. So now imagine if a client sent you a follow-up email, you can attach that email to the same task and your coworker will now see multiple emails that, oh, I see this document and so forth. It's all related in one central place. But email management goes further. One of the things I have to do is, I'm on my phone a lot of times, and I use iPhone with Apple Mail, so I don't use Outlook on my iPhone. Well, Matrix has something called the inbox, and so when you open Matrix, you can go to inbox here, and all of you, have a secret inbox address. What happens is you take that inbox address and you save it as a contact on your phone. So I call it inbox Matrix. And what happens is I'll get an email on my phone and then I say, ooh, this email is important. I don't just flag it. What I do is I click forward, I type the word inbox and it fills out the info for me there. And then guess what? I'll do in the body of the email, the forwarded email, I'll say due in 2 weeks, remind me daily, and then I'll start it. And now I'm able to type a series of command in my forwarded email. It automatically set a due date. It reminds me on a daily basis, and I start it. And that is so useful. It's a feature I literally use all the time because it's just a way to stay organized no matter what platform I'm on, right? I can't wait to go back to the desktop to prioritize the email. And in fact, I could even assign to another person too. And so from here, you can actually assign to, and then you can actually type that person's email. So instead of forwarding to the person, you now assign it to them in Matrix and then set these due dates. And then if you're assigned to people, then you can actually even say, remind everyone. So now they'll get a recurring reminder. I just want to show you what's possible with Matrix, the flexibility of all this that you can generate. There's one further step, which is every project in Matrix has an email address as well. So if you want to take it even further, you can even create rules in Outlook that will forward specific emails into your matrix automatically. So that's what I do. I get an email from Microsoft. It gets forwarded into my Microsoft project, a project dedicated to Microsoft. So that's how the Outlook integration works. And then over at Microsoft Teams, we're probably the most integrated solution in Teams. And so when you go to Teams, you can go to App Store again, install Matrix. And as you can see, I can actually access the full Matrix. But there's a unique feature, which is for us to add the one-on-one view. So for every single person that you talk to inside Teams, you can go and click on this one-on-one here, and then you can see all the tasks that you have with them in Microsoft Teams without having to leave the Microsoft Teams app. So what that allows me to do is for all my direct reports, I can add this one-on-one view by clicking on this plus, choose Matrix, and then choose the one-on-one view. And then I just add that for all my coworkers. And now I have one central place to see all the tasks. And when I have a meeting with them or a call with them, I can click on add share task and create the task right here. And in fact, when I have a conversation with somebody, I can actually just click on that conversation and then choose create Matrix item directly from here. So one of the things that we try to do here is facilitate how easy it is, facilitate you task creation within the context of whatever it is that you're working on. So in this particular case, if you're having a conversation with somebody and you talk about something you want to do and you create a task in Matrix will actually create a special link back to this moment in time when you had this conversation with that person. So it could be 6 months from now, a year from now, where you and your coworker will go back and say, hey, we created this task, but why did we do it again? What else did we talk about? Well, you click on this right here and it takes you back into Microsoft Teams and it shows you that moment in time when you had that conversation with that coworker, a way to capture that context of your conversation. And as you can see, I can actually send Matrix action items as well down here by clicking on Matrix and choosing my item. But one thing I want to recommend that you do is actually install the Matrix chatbot. So to install the Matrix chatbot, you go to plus down here and then choose add get more apps and choose Matrix. But once you install the chatbot, it will send you the reminders. So we talk about all these due dates and reminders and notifications and so forth. Well, Matrix gives you multiple venues for notifications. The first is by email. You can turn that on. I highly recommend you turn it off, right? By email, which means if you get delegated a task, you'll get an email. Our whole goal here is to reduce emails. So you can turn that off, and instead you can actually add this chat bot, and then you can also um, install the desktop app, and there'll be a chat bot there as well. So this chatbot is the place for me to see all of my alerts. But here's the thing, if you click on prompts here, you can actually have a conversation with our Matrix chatbot. So for example, I can say, what should I work on today? Or find an item, or show item, or find something that's due at this moment. So we use natural language here for you to interact with it, for you to query questions around Matrix. And as you can see, I can have the entire Matrix app here, and I can just pin it. Okay, with that, I'm going to go back into my presentation. So if you do nothing else, make sure you sign up for Matrix and use our apps in Teams and Outlook if applicable. Otherwise, make sure you check out the desktop app or make sure that you have the web app and then the mobile apps. Create a project to highlight your top priorities. I mean, I think that's very, very important. Again, if you just want to use Matrix at a personal level, it is so important to track your most important work. So then you know what it is that you need to work on, right? And so that project could start at a personal level. You don't have to invite others to the project. And then if you have important tasks, make sure you set due dates and reminders. Again, the recurring reminders is a killer feature for me because it's so useful. And then ask your coworkers to do the same. So when you ask your coworkers to do their prioritization exercise and you guys compare notes, I think you'll find a lot of value right away. If not, just find servicing things that are not obvious. And so that's helpful. And then one last suggestion here is sit down and compare Matrix every week. So I generally recommend, your start of the week or the end of the week, sit down, look at all your priorities, move things around as needed. And then when you have your staff meetings or when you have your team meetings or your one-on-one meetings, bring up the Matrix and look at that and just say, you know what, am I working on the right things or not? Some advice, use Matrix to track high impact tasks. And when I say high impact task here, I also mean tasks that requires a decision to be made, right? So if you have a series of things you always have to do over and over again, you don't have to use Matrix. You can do whatever it is that you're doing now. But if you're trying to decide, should I work on this? Should I not work on this? Or decide what are the things I should work on first and then later, that's when Matrix is really valuable. And then think of Matrix as a communication tool. When I say communication tool, I mean that you're communicating your priorities to others, and others are communicating their priorities to you. And so the more that you use Matrix, the more transparent your team becomes. And the transparency is actually really helpful because it makes sure that no one's working on the wrong things. Now, I didn't show you how to use our workload report feature. I didn't show you how to see what team members are working on. There's a separate webinar for that. But Matrix actually gives you insight on what everyone's working on so that if you're a manager, don't overload your employees. If they have 60 hours worth of work already, you can't assign another 10. So that's the kind of thing that you can do with Matrix once people are putting down the tasks that they have to do and the due dates and the effort and so forth. And then use Matrix to manage your individual goals. As I mentioned to you, the project to track my 2024 goals or my quarterly goals, those are actually really useful because it helps me be centered. Just because there's so many things we can work on at any point in time. Always set due dates and recurring reminders for your most important tasks. You can star projects and you can star tasks, but make sure that you don't star more than 5 or 10 projects on more than 5 or 10 tasks in a per project basis. So because then again, if you star everything, it becomes kind of a moot point. And then lastly, set that 1 hour dedicated to reviewing your priorities. This is just in general good best practices, right? So do that and it will help you focus on the most important work. What success should look like with Matrix? On a personal level, you're checking Matrix every week to remind yourself of your goals. You have one central place to track your priorities. And then on a team level, everyone understands and are aligned on key tasks. Your important emails are prioritized and you are assigning them to appropriate people. And then be able to see everyone's priorities in real time. You don't have to have a meeting just to be aligned. You can open up Matrix, whatever the time it is that's convenient for you, and see your priorities and see everyone's priorities. Now, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Thank you.